Good afternoon, and welcome back. I'm Peter Chapman, Executive Director and CEO of the Research and Technology Park Corporation here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I'm honored to have with us in our studio, in our conference center today, our special guest and keynote presenter, Mr. Tim Reid. Just want to give him a brief introduction, then turn the floor over to him. Tim Reid, Emmy-nominated actor, director, producer, and entrepreneur, has appeared on television for over 3 decades, from Venus Flytrap on WKRP in Cincinnati, through Simon & Simon, Frank's Place, my favorite, Sister Sister, That 70s Show, HBO's Treme, and recently, OWN's Greenleaf and Love Is. In 2012, Mr. Reid co-produced and directed Keepers of the Flame, a film of Virginia's central role in American history, which runs in the Visitor Center of the Virginia State Capitol. He recently launched the TV series Legacy of a People, described as a talkumentary. Through his nonprofit Legacy Media Institute, he instructs an international group of students and emerging filmmakers promoting excellence and accountability in creating media that reflects a diverse global society. Mr. Reid has received numerous honorary degrees and has been inducted into the National Black College Hall of Fame. He was appointed by 2 governors to serve 2 terms on the Board of Visitors of Norfolk State University, and he currently serves on the Richmond Forum Board. Mr. Reid recently launched an international streaming service, lgcytv.com. The network is intended to be an independent source of entertainment content that highlights and shares the history, lifestyles, and culture of the African diaspora, as they continue to play an essential role in shaping the destiny of mankind throughout the world. Again, I'm pleased to present to you today Mr. Tim Reid. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. As he said, I'm Tim Reid, and I used to be famous. You know, this is a first for me to do sort of a virtual speaking engagement, you know. Usually we always have an audience of a few hundred or a few thousand, depending on the venue. So it's a first for me, so hang with me. We'll try to get through this, and people on the virtual side. I feel like Charlton Heston in the Planet of the Apes. These damn virtual shows! All because of the pandemic. Here I am standing before you, and you can't be here. You know, whenever I speak to a group of people, I think of my grandma. She would be so proud to see me standing before such an illustrious group, both here and virtually, because she always wanted me to be a preacher. She said, Junior, I can see you standing up in front of a whole bunch of people, big shots. I said, tell them what you believe and what you think. Oh, she would be so nice to and happy to see me standing here pretending to be somewhat of a preacher. With my checkered career, I eliminated any opportunity for me to be a real preacher. Matter of fact, I'm not even allowed to play one on television. But my grandma, I'm here because of her and her dreams for me. As I am ready to try to give my thoughts on technology and how it has changed my world and the way I create content, how it has redefined perception versus reality. So much has changed in this world that I grew up in. You know, I grew up back in the day. You know, I want to also thank you, Peter, for introducing and saying 3 decades. You made me younger. It's actually been 5 decades. But when I grew up, there was no dream of anything like a career like I've had. I grew up in segregation and poverty. Boy, we were so poor we couldn't afford but 2 letters. We were just P-O. But out of that, I was able to get counseling from some of my elders of that day. My grandma, who raised me, had no more than a 6th grade education. And yet, she was one of the wisest people I've ever known in my entire life. She had that simple, dead-on kind of wisdom. She could tell if you were lying before the words dried on your lips. Just before she passed away many years ago, I got a call saying, your grandma wants to see you. And I jumped in my car. I was in Chicago at that time living. And I drove 16 hours straight to get there to be by her side. When I came through the hospital corridor, people said, oh, you must be Junior. Your grandma waiting for you. And I went in the room where she was kept, and she was sitting on the side of the bed, dressed. And she says, oh, you're here, I can go now. She said, these people in here trying to kill me. Her wig was on backwards, and she just wanted out of that hospital. So I put her in the car to take her back to her place, and she said, Junior, stop, I got to get some stamps. I said, all right, Grandma. So I took her to the post office, and I was worried about it. I said, Grandma, you stand over here, and I'll queue up in line. She said, okay, baby. So I'm in line, and I look back, and she was attentive, just looking at something on the wall. I'm going, what has got her attention? And she was just staring at it. I went, I said, Grandma, are you all right? She said, yeah, baby. She said, who is these people? I looked, I said, oh, those are people who are wanted by the police and the FBI. She said, they want them? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, why didn't they keep them when they took the picture? Yes, ma'am, that's kind of smart. That's kind of how many of us feel about our children today. Why didn't we condition them better, condition their behavior before we let them out, before they left home and started school, before they were changed and conditioned for the life that they're now living? You know, people back then, as I said about my grandma, knew things that we have apparently forgotten. I think we're kind of in the age of forgetfulness. First of all, they knew that life was for living. They knew that when you come to a fork in the road, you take it. Today, we seem to spend a whole lot of time hoping and praying that things will get better. We allow our realities to be determined by others. Most see life as a big gamble, hoping they'll hit the lottery or Bitcoin will stay up and not go down. But with all the issues that we face today, we seem to be like a deer in the headlights, slow to take action, to change our realities. No one wants to be woke. Woke is now a dirty word. A word as defined by the dictionary meaning aware of and actively attentive to the important facts and issues facing society. But no, they don't want us to be woke. And if you are woke, you could be punished on Twitter or in Florida. We seem to want to leave the art of being awake to others, other people, politicians, celebrities, technology, Google, apps for your iPhone. In our technical-driven world, we're now constantly bombarded with information at every minute of our lives. It makes me think that there must be very little joy in our lives that we need to consume so much of what it used to be called information or entertainment. Now it's kind of be known as infotainment, all in one. We now live in a society that is heavily dominated by mass media, where large corporations use technology to stream and to broadcast opinions that they want society to accept. They define the perception of what is now sold as reality. Technology's latest big $100 billion dream offering is called the metaverse. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg said, "The metaverse will soon become the primary way that we live our lives and spend our time." Oh, goody. Why would we want to go to an island such as St. Croix when I can go into the basements of my parents' house put on some virtual glasses, sit in my underwear, and experience artificial virtual world that technology has now made possible for us. Now, of course, in that little basement, I can't touch sand. There's none there. But I can virtually feel like this is a perception. I'm there. I'll imagine the warmth of the sun shining down on me. I'll imagine the cool breeze going across my face, the smell of the ocean. And then I'll realize, no, that's not the ocean, that's me, because I've been sitting in my underwear for hours in the metaverse. The metaverse is the next evolution of the internet, like a 3.0 part 2. It's a network of virtual 3D worlds that allows us to interact with each other. Not really each other, our avatars. Those things we create to look like our real selves. I mean, who wants to deal with real life anyway? But thanks to these great leaders, Zuckerberg, through the metaverse, he'll take on our burden of having a real life. In his new world, we'll drive our new virtual Ferraris to our new virtual oceanfront homes. In its full expression, we'll exist in a completely digital experience where anyone can escape the boundaries of reality, to live, to work, to play in a world that is created and controlled by Zuckerberg and Google and any other techno power. We can't go a minute without having technical. I'll let you answer that. Must be very important. Isn't it amazing? You see people walk around with phones crossing the street. You think, what the hell could they be thinking about? What is so important that you can't cross a street without talking on the phone?
It had to be the Virginia guy, too.
I was sitting in my car one day, and the light was red and it changed. And right behind me, I hear this horn, bong, 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 bong. I'm going, come on, man. Can't you see I'm on the phone? There will be no need in the virtual world for real motivation to create works of art or allow the wonders of a natural world to motivate us to climb real mountains or to write beautiful sonnets. Artificial intelligence will create every virtual thing we need. Boy, are we screwed. As I have said before, and I think you published it here in something that talked about my coming, we're at a critical point in our history as we witness the dynamic merger of technology and humanity. Technologies will either assist our cultural diversity to flourish and enhance our future, or through its formidable power, it will destroy any chance of us realizing a mutual destiny. It's solely up to those who control and program its power. Those of us who fight to maintain some cultural significance in this new world of the latest technology must become cultural programmers or continue to be programmed. You know, history, those of us who take the time to read and put our phone down long enough, history does repeat itself. A lot faster now than it used to. About 22 years ago, technology introduced a thing called the internet 1.0. 22 years ago. It was unbelievable. I mean, I was fascinated. You could sit in front of a little tiny black screen and enjoy playing Pong. Bing, bong. I mean, it was just fascinating. That one game made millions of dollars for people. Then came a thing called the World Wide Web. Wow. www. something in living color. That's when entertainment was brought to the internet. Now videos and music could be seen on a computer screen, a little slightly larger. And guess what? With all that, it failed. It went bust. A lot of people, how could that possibly? Hundreds of millions of dollars were spent by Spielberg and all kinds of people to create this thing and take advantage of 1.0 internet. You ever thought about why it failed? Well, guess why it failed? It was impossible to take analog, which, by the way, all entertainment, movies, music, everything, was in what we call analog. There was no digital process at that point. There was no digital content. So they were trying to cram analog into this new internet, this new technology, and it didn't fit. They could never get it to be in sync. It always drifted out of sync. So it was over. I even shut down a internet division at my company at that time. But you know what? You never count out technology. What did it do? It created digital equipment needed to record video and sound. This newly created digital will always be in sync with the digital world that will distribute it. I remember when the first digital camera came out, Canon, huge camera, that we were beginning to shoot content on as opposed to film, opposed to the analog ways. So suddenly the world was full of this new thing called digital video, digital sound, MP3, 4, everything. It was all coming through us, and from now on, all creative content will be digitally formatted. It's now cheaper, faster, and easier to distribute all over the world, sometimes instantly, this digital content. And now, just about anyone can create content that can be used to program humanity's opinions of what is perception versus reality. To program or continue to be programmed. That is the question. That is the question that now faces all of society. It's funny, history repeats itself. Master communicator Shakespeare said it best, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them, to die to sleep no more. Now, he wrote that way, way back. That's where we are now. For us, we have been blessed to be in a situation to be able to create and distribute infotainment. And that is our question. Those of you in the communication business, whether you are from a technical point of view, because of the advances in technology, you can now do things that were completely impossible just 22 years ago. Whenever you see a movie nowadays about the metaverse and that new world that is being created in movies and in books, it usually takes place in a post-apocalyptic dystopian world where they present to you that the metaverse is usually the best substitute and it offers a better life. You see it in Star Wars, it doesn't matter. That's being sold to us. And you know what? It's not a bad idea. I'm not here preaching against technology or the virtual world. It's nice to have a virtual place to go and hang out and drive that virtual Bentley that you can never afford in the real world. But it should never become a substitute for the real world, where perceptions rule over thoughts and actions. I was chosen to be a storyteller by my family, a tradition brought over from Africa. I was a chosen griot, was appointed to tell the stories, to help the traditions last, to pass on the wisdom of the elders, and to help keep our culture alive. That was my job when I was 9 to 10 years old. Junior, you tell them what happened at church. Junior, tell them what happened at school. So-and-so got shot. Tell them about that. You know him. You know, my grandmother had a boarding house, so There was constant stories being told, and I was the one. For the last 50 years of my life, I have tried to honor that tradition and practice my craft working in television and film. It has afforded me an opportunity to travel the world and gain a small measure of fame and fortune. You know, back in the late 40s, the technology at that time introduced a new thing. That's why I say history repeats itself. It was called television. It was initially created for the military, and their purpose at that time was to come up with a better means to spread propaganda. And they soon realized that, wait a minute, we could probably make some money with this thing called television. So they brought in a few people who had built and controlled the world of radio. They were all the people who produced and controlled what we heard on these small boxes, little glowing lights with stations. They controlled it. And one of them was a man called William Paley. Now, most of the young people never heard of him, so Google it. Through his abilities, he was able to integrate entertainment within this new technology. Mr. Paley became known as the father of television. Why? Well, with his brainchild, Columbia Broadcasting Company, today simply known as CBS, he brought to television the evening news, TV dramas, talk shows, and he launched the careers of many stars who gained their fame and fortune through being on television. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Paley before he passed away. It was in the late 80s. I was in New York to promote a show that I had created called Frank's Place. And I decided, and my marketing opportunity, to go there and to speak to all the people at CBS whose job it was to sell my programming to the rest of the world. So I would show my programming during the lunch hour, and I'd show them a couple episodes, and then talk to them. And a call came down, said, Mr. Paley would like to see Tim Reid. Well, it sent shockwaves through CBS. He had never seen a black man up in his office. And the last star to be seen by him was Jackie Gleason. What on earth did he want to see this little poor black kid from segregation in Whaleyville, Virginia? What purpose? So everybody was like shocked. And the president of the company had never been up in his office. His office, by the way, you had to go out of the building and take one elevator all the way up to the top of the building, 60th floor. And they said, well, my God, what? So they grabbed me and my wife was when we went in a room, and they began to debrief me like I was going to see the Pope on how not to do this and what not to say. And finally, the time came, and we went around and got on this elevator, and we went up to the top. And I was getting a little bit nervous. And when we opened the door to his floor, and the whole floor was his office, I don't know if you saw the movie Good Night, Good Luck, Good Night, by the story of Edward R. Murrow. I think George Clooney played the lead. There's a scene where they go see William Paley. If you haven't seen it, look at it, and what I'm saying now will have even more of an impact. We go into his office, it opens up, it is a huge, it's like being on a basketball court. It's just massive. So massive, there's an echo. Hello, hello, I'm here to say Mr. Paley. I'm Tim, Reid. Have a seat. So we sit down, and across his wall, windows all around 3/4 of the floor, and you can see Manhattan. And their art, some of the greatest art that I'd ever seen. Finally, they put me in the room, and we went in. The president of the network sat there. He was scared to death. And Mr. Paley sat at the end of the table with the sun behind it. It was almost like a scene from Network. He was like this, you almost had to squint to see him. And he was sitting there, and on the walls were Grecos, Rembrandts. There was a Rodin statue that we closed the door on. I mean, it was just so much art, millions of dollars worth of art. And I'm looking at this guy, and he and my wife were talking about the art. She recognized some of the art, and he was shocked that I guess one of us knew who that artist was. And finally, he looked at me. He said, young man, he said, I've had the pleasure of seeing your program, Frank's Place. He says, and I have to tell you, I like the program. I would have been proud to have it on the network when I ran it. Well, for Mr. Paley, the father of television, to say that to me was one of the most flattering things anybody have said creatively about my creative work. So I said, thank you, sir. And then he said what this conversation is all about. He said, I have but one question to ask you. I said, what is that, sir? I'm eager. I'm like, tell me. What? He said, what is your propaganda? I went, oh. A little bell every now and then that rings in your brain said, this is important. And I was like, wow. And so many things flashed before my head. Why was television invented? It was a method of propaganda. And he asked me, what was my propaganda? And I paused. My grandmother raised me well. I looked at him and I said, sir, I come from a community of which you know nothing about. It's called Colored Town. Said I never spoke socially or worked for a white person until I was a freshman in college. I said, whenever I watched television, there were very few of us on television. I said, and the few that I did see, none of them looked like or related like anyone I knew in all the years I grew up in my black community. I said, it dawned on me that you don't really know who I am. You don't know my culture. You don't know much about me as a black American. I said, I know most of the people were enlightened about black people through the miniseries Roots, but they saw the worst that had happened to us. They don't know my grandmother who owned her own house and ran a boarding house. They don't know the people who owned the drugstores, the movie theaters that managed or were owned by blacks. They don't know this thriving community in which I grew up in with no contact whatsoever with white America. I said, I'm trying to do that with Frank's Place. He looked at me and says, good, well done. He said, you're going to keep the same writers? Because the writing is most important. The word is first. I said, yes, sir. He said, I wish you well. And I walked out of that office, and right then, my life changed. I knew that from then on, I was going to be a cultural activist, to make use of the ever-changing technology and have a hand in telling the stories that media uses to define and shape the stereotypes and opinions of people like me and my culture. Information is power. It's one of the most powerful things on this planet. And we were told that even when we were young, but back then, we were told it was in a good way. It's not always in a good way. Today's information, meaning everything we know about ourselves and other cultures, those things that we accept as truth and now feed us, comes from today's technology, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. What the hell is TikTok? I'm on TikTok. I don't even know why. But I'm there. I'm TikToking with the best of you. Using this incredible advancement made in technology, media is now able to define and control information and thus control the reality that others declare as perception or truth. Perception now rules over reality and truth. As a thing is perceived, creates the actions and the thoughts of others. We now live in an era where the world will survive or fail based on the ability of people who can weave a path through this infotainment and yet build and stay strong of character, either in ourselves or in our children. Let me explain what I mean by character, strong of character, and why it's so important. The late psychologist James Hillman, in his book, The Force of Character, and I would recommend all of you Google it. You probably get it online free. He asks, what is character? And how does it force us into the patterns we live? Character, he says, forms the habits, your friendships, your fears, the level of your ambitions, your faults. Character affects your loves and your hates. Character, he says, is fate. When we talk about people from the past, our ancestors or whoever, we tell the stories that define their character at that time. That is why telling the history of my people, Black Americans, is more important now than ever before. Our stories feed our imagination, defines our culture. They give our current lives value. So if the stories are consistently negative or out of context with the true reality, then your fate will be affected and your life will be made more challenging. So I say, the hell with things like cancel culture. If character is fate, then we better start some serious character building. We better take the time to retell the history of our ancestors. We better put our lives and history in context to world history. It doesn't matter if you're on an island in St. Croix or the island of Manhattan. If we do not tell of the beautiful, courageous, honorable people whose sweat, tears, and dreams made our prosperity today possible, if we never recall the clarity of a decision or the cost of their sacrifice, where will the generations that follow gain the information? Where are they going to get it from? Political pundits, reality shows, or what passes as trusted news? The great Charles Dickens wrote what has to be the second best line ever written in a book. First, of course, is "in the beginning." But Dickens wrote in the book A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I personally think that those words best describe where we are now in the 21st century, the age of Aquarius. Back in the day, our people survived because the alternative was not acceptable. Men and women made their decisions based on what was best for their families, for their communities, and for themselves. They didn't have Fox News or MSNBC or CNN to tell them what to think. They couldn't Google it. They used their instincts and they thought for themselves. And yes, they made a hell of a lot of mistakes. But as my grandma would say, Junior, do something even if it's wrong. Don't just sit there. If she only knew how much trouble those bit of advice has gotten me into. But it also has made me believe that anything that I can dream is possible. That advice is part of my character, and it has made me seek opportunities that have taken me around the world. This poor skinny kid born in poverty, descendants of sharecroppers, has dined with presidents and seen many of the world's greatest wonders. It's no secret that some of us so-called adults have really screwed things up. Now most of us won't admit it, but we don't have a clue how to fix it. We really don't. Raise interest rates, lower interest rates. Print more money, don't print any money. Use Bitcoin. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. We're all confused as adults. We don't have a clue. I guess that's why nowadays we see so many grown men in Washington yelling and crying on television all the time. What is that about? All of a sudden men just want to show, oh my God, oh, look at my life. Oh, I can't solve inflation, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. All this power I have hurts, boo-hoo, boo-hoo. I lost the election, boo-hoo. I won the election, boo-hoo. I haven't seen this much yelling and crying since they shot Old Yeller. Now, you older folks tell these young folks who Old Yeller is. We are at a very, very different time. When you think about it, the best of what this country is today, what we mostly rely on in our daily, day-to-day lives, was created by those who ushered in the 20th century. They created much of the infrastructure we use till this day, historically black colleges or whatever they are. They were men and women who served and fought in World War I, World War II. They survived a pandemic, wearing a mask, by the way. They made their way through the Great Depression, desegregated our schools, created ragtime, jazz, R&B, taught Elvis to wiggle, and won our civil rights. They were, without a doubt, the most creative, courageous, greatest generation of the modern world. What will become of us? Our legacy will be determined by our actions in this pre-apocalyptic 21st century. Do we have the character to endure the challenges before us? We owe it to our ancestors, to those who stood tall so that we could stand today. If character does control our fate of our country and our communities, our culture rests with the people who can use technology, the technology before us, to solve problems and make this world a better place to dream. Who's now helping your daughters, your sons, to help them shape their opinions, conditioning them and their beliefs? I'll tell you who. Bloggers, Twitterers, TikTokers, Instagrammers, influencers, and media moguls. If character determines fate and media defines reality, these are dangerous times because most of us treat media like it's the Immaculate Reception. We got our work cut out for us. Now, we can use technology for our benefit. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that technology is bad. I'm merely something that we should fear. Thanks to technology, someone like myself or you with access to quality content can create a network. Can I get ready to roll that video? Here's my latest venture in my effort to reach the African diaspora, no matter where they have called home. Ready to show the video for me? Oh, he's on it? Hello, I'm Tim Reid, founder of LGCY TV Network. I'm here to announce that we are adding a new channel to our network. The channel will cover travel, culture, and art. We are traveling now more than ever before, spending billions of dollars internationally. LGCY TV wants to be there with you to see the world through our eyes and to tell our stories as we rediscover our culture and explore our love for art. So join us as our network of channels expands from sports inside and out, bringing you the Black legends who brought their style and talents that changed the game forever. There's our video podcast channel that is a platform for our opinions and views that adds context to the discussions that are shaping our world. So look for our new channel for travel, culture, and art. Remember, LGCY TV is not just a network, it's who we are. Watch us as we grow. Hello, I'm Tim. Now, many of us are just now realizing how thoroughly we have accepted the hypocrisy before us. It's a dramatic challenge that we all face right now, those of us who have any access to technology or content. And I have to say that small adjustments in our attitude, the way we've been doing the past few years, in our present emergency will not be enough. It's not just going to disappear because of natural course of events. It's going to take vision to match the new technology, a new kind of human purpose. Our younger generations need intervention. They need a diversity of infotainment. Our conditioning is not going to work on them like it's worked on us. They are to become the great citizens, leaders of the 21st century, and in spite of all that student debt, survive the financial mess we've created. They need to be, no, they must be strong of character. After 50 years of experience in the media business, I personally refuse to stand by and watch others continue to condition the minds and character of my people. My fate and the fate of our younger generation are all one and the same. I ask all of you who are thinking about our business in any way, shape, or form, or your culture, to join me in this battle to win the hearts and minds of the generation upon whose shoulders we have placed the greatest economic, environmental, and social problems the modern world has ever seen. They must clean up our mess. They must use technology to help heal this planet. They must bring justice to our system and bring justice to an unjust society. Our fate rests with technology in the hands of people of character. And know this, there's always opportunity in chaos, peace in conflict, and success that can be built upon the failures of others. Thank you. Can we get the video? Are you able to run that? Oh, the audience saw it. You guys didn't see anything. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Reid.
Thank you. Thank you.
Would you mind pausing? I think we have time for a few questions.
Okay.
So we have literally a global audience virtually, and I know that there's some enthusiasm within our in-studio audience, and so we want to give them a chance to ask a few questions as well.
I hope Zuckerberg wasn't watching.
I'll tell you a story about that. We are going to have a speaker from Facebook tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll get to meet.
Show them this. Maybe they'll
her.
help us with that metaverse.
So I don't, I have a lot of questions for Mr. Reid, but I want to give other folks a chance to chime in. But I would like to start, if we can, with LGCY TV. Mm-hmm. We were talking about that yesterday, and I thought it would be good to start the conversation there. If you could just give us a little bit more background on the platform and what your objectives are.
LGCY TV, legacy of a people, but I have younger people, thank God, working with me, and they said, that's old school. LGCY TV, that's all you need. All right, I'll go with it. Came out of the need brought on to me by the pandemic. When we got locked in our homes for a full year or so, what do? You can fight with your wives or your lovers or do whatever you do, but I had to do something, and myself and my partner, Trevon, we realized that we'd have to have a safe place. So we made our studio pretty much our space. And we would get there, we'd leave our other space, and it wasn't that far from either of us, and we would meet there and look at all this content that we own. For over the years, as I said, after leaving the office of William Paley, I went home and I was changed. I took my money and I decided I was going to build a studio in Petersburg, Virginia. And it was a 50-acre facility, a few $1 million, and we began to create content, all kinds of content, movies, television series. And because of the price point, if you want me to come and work for you and you can't afford my fee, but I like the idea, I'll make a deal with you. Give me what you have, we'll create content, but I own it. Or at least I have the right to distribute it the way I choose. So with that in mind, I began to work for other people. I was one of the founders of TV One. Most people don't know that. 70% of all the content that was shown on that network for the first 6-7 months or so were content created at my studio. And I had a coup. I was in Brazil shooting a movie, and there was a coup, and they got me out. But I made a little money on it, not a lot. But nonetheless, all this content we kept making. And I started the Institute, and we would travel to other places in the world, Nigeria, Ethiopia, South Africa, London, Trinidad, Cuba. We've been going to Cuba now for the last 15 years. And we always shoot. If you're in our business and you're a photographer or you're a filmmaker, everything is content. You have to always be shooting. Keep a camera with you, keep whatever it is. And nowadays, there are people winning Oscars with iPhones. So there's no excuse anymore. And I had all this content. So I said to Trevon, this thing called streaming just kind of popped up because everybody was locked in the house watching what little entertainment was available on cable. And so I said, we should go in the streaming business. So I had to go find a platform. That's why, I love what you guys are doing here and creating your own platforms and servers. The cost was beginning to drop in terms of what it would take to have a server or a platform. So I found a company that offered me space on their platform, and we put up our first year of LGCY TV. We actually had more content streaming around the world than Disney at that time. We had hours and hours of content. I made deals with Ethiopian filmmakers, with other Nigerian filmmakers, and they gave me their stuff. And so the whole purpose of LGCY is to give a platform to our culture. My hope is that one day to have a channel up that's in the language of the people who created it. I'd love, we see Spanish television all over the world in their language. How come we don't have anything coming from Africa in their language? We have to always do it for English so that white folks will understand what we're doing. So I took charge of my content and we did it. I did not like the platform. A lot of people in our business on the tech side have no interest in content or the purpose of our content. They're interested in, of course, making as much money as I would like to make money. But they don't really have any interest in what they're putting out there and what it means to young people, or old people for that matter. And I didn't like the way the platform was ignoring the purpose. Our slogan is, it's not just a network, it's who we are. And I couldn't get them to understand that if they would help and work with me, we could really build something that was unique at that time. Well, they didn't, and I left, took my content off, and we went down for a few months, and then finally I found another platform, Tiki Live, where we are now. And we're on that platform, we're getting a better experience, we're learning a lot, and my dream, in a matter of a year, is to have control of my own platform, where I can offer it to any other people of color who wants to put their stuff up. And we'll put it up. I want to create a black YouTube that you can put your content up. And if we sell, if commercials come on, you'll get paid better than YouTube, as a matter of fact. So that's what we're trying to do now. We're trying to explore. We'll probably put our first server up and by the end of October. Where we put it, we don't know. There's talk about putting LGCY TV London, LGCY TV Nigeria, and the idea is that the content creators that I have worked with over the years, they will put their content up. Many of them now have studios. Many of them are training other emerging filmmakers. So their content will go up. I'll put their content on my system, and they'll put, their content on my system. I'll put my content on their system. So that's the idea. That's where we're going with it. I want to create something. This is a legacy period for me. I want to create something that young people are able to carry on and build an empire with. Doesn't have to be me. I don't have to see it, right. But I want it to be there.
And perhaps there will eventually be an LGCY Eastern Caribbean or LGCY Virgin Islands. And I'm saying this under the guise of humor, of course, but we at the Research and Tech Park Corporation are engaged in a deep discussion and strategy development process around what we call creative economy, right? And we think that film and media represent really a logical direction for us, not only because we have such rich content here, given our history and our culture in the Caribbean, but also because this is a good place to do film work. And so this is a very timely and important discussion. And I know that we will come back to the issue during other segments of this conference as it relates to creative economy. But we have just a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that we're giving other folks an opportunity to ask a few questions. So I know there are several questions coming in from our virtual audience, and we also have a couple of questions from our in-studio audience. So do we want to start with the in-studio audience, or do we want to start with the virtual audience? So Anna, virtual audience, perhaps? Yeah, it's good. It's fine. Thanks, Anna. So the first question is, there are several. I don't know if we have time for all of them. I see the producers giving me the evil eye. So the first question is, how do organizations and ethnic cultural traditions remain authentic but stay open to the future? How do we determine, it's a two-part question, how do we determine what is authentic to what is being served up as authentic?
Well, first part, I would say purpose. If your purpose is to try and change the past to suit the future, I'm not interested in that. If your purpose is to bring the past into the future to inspire other people to realize their own strengths and their own qualities, that's how I have attempted to do it. What was the other part? How to determine what is authentic?
How do we determine what is authentic to what is being served up?
Yeah. Well, see, that's what happens
as authentic
when you have been conditioning. You don't even know up and down. You don't know what is real. Real is the truth is there. I mean, the truth has always been there. You know, it's been darkened because of the darkness of hypocrisy. But what's authentic is what's been handed down from the elders, from the generations of knowledge that exist. It requires work. You have to find the truth. You have to really want it. You have to be inspired. You know, it's like whatever it is, whether it's Christianity, you have to read religious books. You have to search. And there will be times when you are debating if this thing could happen. You have to go deeper. You know, it requires effort. Most people don't want effort. They want to be told what's the truth. I've never been that kind of a person. I never just stopped at one book. If something confused me, I would read other things. And you find these incredible stories that are there. It's not like our history isn't hidden. Black history is not hidden. It's there. What we are missing is the energy and the passion and the creative urgency to go find it. You want to find history? Travel. You know, you guys love the movie Wakanda. Everybody, oh, Wakanda, they're selling dolls and everything. You know, there was a real Wakanda. It's called Ethiopia, the only country on this planet that was never conquered or colonialized by white people. In all the history dating back to antiquities, it's never been ruled by a white person. Imagine that. Never. The history dates back. The father of Noah, Enoch, was an Ethiopian. You never did know that. You know, you have to go, you have to travel. If you can't go there, you know, if you have to go in a virtual world, go. But don't stop there. Find the books that goes with that. Read the book of Enoch. It was taken out of the Bible. It wasn't canonized as part of the Bible. Book of Jubilee. There's so much information available to us. All we have to do is have the will and the need and the purpose to find it.
Great. I want to go. I know we're running out of time for this segment, but if I could get just a little bit more time from the producers, because this is a very important conversation. So we have another question, and I'm gonna assume that what the questioner, what the viewer is asking about is film technology. So the question is, how do we provide better access to, I'm going to assume they mean film technology education and innovation training to young diasporic people? And I picked out this question from the stack because it's apropos of what we were talking about this morning, what Alfonso Rodriguez in particular was talking about, which is the importance of talent to building an ecosystem. And it's critical to what we do here at the RT Park Corporation. So Mr. Reid, if you want to address this a little bit, drawing from your own experiences, perhaps.
Well, as I slightly mentioned, but when I started the Institute, Legacy Media Institute, the iPad had not been created. The iPhone, I don't know what version it was, but you couldn't get with so much video on it. But yet, there were people, as I said, digital equipment, things you take for granted now. There was no movies or television shows shot on digital film. They were all shot on video of some kind, videotape, and the bandwidth was all analog. So when the digital world came in, equipment adjusted, created. I say that to say that it doesn't take a lot of money to make a movie as it did when I made my first film. I mean, just the camera package, the film, the equipment, cost $250,000 just to have it. That's before I developed it or anything with the film. Film costs. You had to buy it all at one time so you have the same emulsion so that the color timing, I mean, it's just so much involved. Today, they are making movies with this. They're shooting 40:1 and editing later. They got all kinds of editing. So the technology has made it possible for anyone who wants to have a career in it has the tools. What's missing is the skills to do it. I have to say that the young people today are, and the ones I see and work with, but even in this day, are so far ahead of where I was when I started in the business. You look at some of the videos, I don't like necessarily the messages, but I watch them to know what they're doing. They're doing incredible work. This stuff on TikTok and Instagram, you look at these videos and you go, oh my goodness, I'm learning things from them. Trevon and I will come and say, did you see this angle? Or did you see this guy, the way he shot that? And there are good young people out there. What's missing is the understanding of the skills and how to enrich your skills so that you're not just a mediocre filmmaker, or I call it film, it's actually video maker, but that term filmmaker, everybody wants to call it, but nobody shoots on film. Why they call themselves filmmakers is beyond me. But anyway, what they're able to do just with the equipment is amazing. If they would literally take the time to train themselves to reach the skill level that will get attention, they can have a career unlike anything they ever dreamed. But you just can't have it because you want to do it or you got great equipment. You got to really understand storytelling. It all starts with the story. And we got to understand stories.
That's great. This is obviously of tremendous importance to what we're doing at the RT Park, to what we're doing in the Eastern Caribbean and in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I should also point out that it's very much apropos of some things that we are working on right now with the University of the Virgin Islands in terms of facilitating access to training opportunities within media technology and film work. So there'll be a little bit more on that later on today. So I'm disappointed that we've come to the end of this segment because I really want to continue the conversation. But I want to thank Mr. Reid for coming and sharing.
Thank you for this experience. Scared the hell out of me.
This has been great. Thank you all.